Hey everybody, it's Jay, and a while back I bought this so-called Czech Dussack. I think it's actually made in India, but its high carbon steel is based on a historical design that is called a sword oftentimes, but I think is really more historically a farm implement, just a basic utility blade, kind of like a machete. Just for fun, I did try to see if I could cut bottles with it, and really all I succeeded in doing was baseball batting them around. That's partially because the blade is very dull. Also, probably partially because the blade is very thin and tapers down quite a bit, has a pretty pronounced distal taper, and is really light. So I assume that what that is it lacks a little bit of the heft required to make for a good cutting sword. But since it's cheap, and since the edge is dull anyway, what I'm going to try to do is reprofile the edge and try to make it a little bit better for cutting. And what I'm going to do is start with a very gradual angle. I'm actually going to start, this work sharp goes to 10. I'm going to start closer to an 8 or a 5 degree angle by putting it basically as thin as I can get, and then work my way up the angles until I get to the edge part in an effort to make a very gradual angle from the primary bevel, which is this part here, to the secondary bevel, which is the actual edge. So I'm just going to try to make that a very smooth line all the way down to the edge. What's on there now is a flat grind, and like I said, it's not a particularly good edge. It's pretty dull. In fact, not quite butter knife dull, but getting there. See if I can sharpen that up a little bit. I'm mainly doing this because I find sharpening edges, reprofiling, making knives, etc. to be pretty relaxing, to be very meditative, because it requires a lot of focus and a steady hand. And also because I'm kind of bored and need a little something to do. With this being a cheap knife, I figured I'd go ahead and record it. Not really so much so you can learn how to do it yourself, because this isn't intended to be a how-to thing and I'm not an expert. And maybe you can learn from my mistakes too. So I'm going to go ahead and get started grinding on this. I'm not going to record all of the grinding, but I'll get started, record some of the steps, and then we'll go test it. So we've got a nice burr raised on here now, and we've cut down the geometry on the edge a little bit, so it's a lot smoother, a lot more gradual on the secondary bevel to the primary bevel. And we've also got a nice apple seed or convex edge now. I don't know if the camera's focusing on that at all. I'm trying here. So we're going to go ahead and switch up to the next grit up. I believe this is listed as a medium grit. It's X65. It might also just be coarse grit in Work Sharp's nomenclature. So we're going to go ahead and switch over to the next grit up and just work our way up all the way up to the strap, and then we'll come back with the final edge. Alrighty, so we are at an almost imperceptible edge. Now, you're going to see it in the camera very clearly because the edge has been polished really nicely. So you can see where that bevel, where that secondary bevel begins. However, what I can tell you, from a feel standpoint, there is almost no feeling in change in angle from the edge of the secondary bevel up to the primary bevel. It's almost a straight, flat edge, which should be, normally you would kind of want that in a really nice cutting sword, or even some chef's knives or whatever. But we weren't going to hold our breath for this to be a great cutting sword, like I said, but at least maybe we can cut a bottle or two with it now. And that'll be the next thing that we attempt to do, is cut a bottle. So let's go see how that works. So recording this after dark because it's the late afternoon in the wintertime, or I guess early evening I should say, and there's not really any way to do this after work except to do it at night with a flashlight, so that's what I'm doing. But the answer is, can you make an $18 sword a good cutter? Apparently yes, because this cut extremely well. Very, very impressed with it. Much easier than I was expecting. Again, I'm not going to go so far to say that this is a great cutter, but for 18 bucks, I've made it pretty decent. Now, it'll just slip right through bottles instead of launching them across the yard, so not too shabby. This is Jay. If you're interested in checking out this sword machete thing, check out Cult of Athena's website. I'm not sure if they still have them in stock, but that's where I got mine from. Again, it's called a Czech Dussack. And be sure to check out our other videos. Subscribe to us if you haven't already. And check out the link to our Patreon page if you want to help support us. And we'll see you again soon next time.